Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you how you can build interactive dashboards on Excel. Now these are very simple to set up and can really help you in your job. A dashboard can be a great tool when it comes to tracking KPIs, comparing data, and generating reports that can help you or your stakeholders make decisions. Dashboards can also be interactive where the user can filter data based on their requirements, which makes it way better than traditional reports. So we're going to create some interactive dashboards that are really easy to set up. We're going to learn how to create pivot tables, pivot charts, and then use that to create our dashboard. We're then going to add slices and timelines just to make the dashboard a bit more interactive. These are some core concepts in Excel and are really important to understand. I'm also going to show you the best practice process in creating a dashboard in general. So the project we're doing today is creating a sales dashboard for a company called Company X, and they want us to present this dashboard to their investors. That being said, let's get going. So before I get started, let's talk about what exactly is a dashboard. A dashboard consists of charts and tables, typically on one page, that helps stakeholders like managers or business leaders in tracking key KPIs or metrics. Now, dashboards are made so that their stakeholders can make decisions off of it. Dashboards generally are customizable to meet the specific needs of a department or even the company as a whole. Now, this is very important. If you create a dashboard, your customer is the person who is looking at the dashboard. Their opinion matters. A dashboard will essentially become ineffective if people do not use it. Now, behind the scenes, a dashboard connects to your files, databases, APIs, and outputs this data in a visually appealing way. Ideally, dashboards should be interactive where the users can opt to filter the dashboard to see a specific date range, product, etc. So now that we know why dashboards are important, let's find out what we'll be doing. I have a project brief for us. You are a data analyst for Company X, and they would like to present their Q1 or Q1 2022 sales to the board. However, they're not too sure how to display the data. The main dataset is the sales data, and the link to the dataset is below. Ideally, the board generally likes to see the following: sales by certain characteristics such as month, branch, and city, as well as payment type. And the board would also like it to be interactive where they can choose to filter the date by month, city, or branch, as well as customer type. Great. So now that we have all our information, let's go on to the next step. Step 1. Getting the data. First things first here, you need a data set, and we're going to be using sales data. The file is called companyxsales.xlsx. Let's open it up and have a look at what's here. So we have sales data. Great. And I'm assuming this data stores every invoice. So every time a customer has bought something from Company X, it gets stored here, and each row represents a sale or an invoice. Let's look at columns of the data. Invoice ID. This represents your unique invoice number. We get date, so the date the sale was made. There is something called branch, the branch that actually made the sale. We have city, so the city the sale was made in. We have customer type, so whether the customer type was a normal customer or a member, and I'm thinking for this case, maybe member probably means part of a loyalty program that they need to sign up to. Gender, the gender of the customer. Product line, so what product was bought by the customer. Unit price, so the price of one product. Quantity is the actual quantity that was sold. And then sales, which probably means the total sales, which is unit price times quantity. And then we have payment type, so how the sale was made. Okay, so we understand the data. And now it's really good to do this as a first step, because if you don't understand a column, you would go back to the stakeholder, such as the sales manager, and ask them about it. So it's often good to review the whole data set. There's nothing here that we are unsure of, so let's proceed on to the next step. Step 2. Designing the dashboard. I added this step because designing the dashboard before you actually develop it is important. And this generally means creating a simple mockup or sketch of the dashboard. Why would you need to do this? Well, I mentioned earlier that dashboards are customizable to meet the specific needs of a department, a person, or even the company. If you are creating the dashboard, your customer is going to be the person using it. If they aren't happy, you are just going to waste your time, and the dashboard will just never be seen. So a good step to avoid that would be to sit with the person or people and sketch out a mockup. So if you want to give it a try, pause the video, get a piece of paper, and sketch out what you think would be a good dashboard layout based on the project brief requirements. Okay, so this is what I've come out with, but by the way, if you had something different, that's totally okay. Your version may even be a better layout than mine, but since I'm the instructor, we're going to be using my layout. So I have a title, and to the left, I have a sales by month chart, simple bar chart. I then have a sales by city, which is a horizontal chart, so essentially the axis will be swapped. I then have a pie chart for sales by branch, and then I have a stacked bar chart for sales by month and payment type. And then to the right, I have my options that I can filter the data with. I can filter the data by city, by customer type, branch, and date. Slices and timelines on Excel are basically filters. So essentially, you would have sat down with your stakeholder and you would have drawn this up together. That way, you know exactly what your stakeholder wants from the start. This is also the chance where maybe if the stakeholder wants to create a chart based off of a calculation, you can ask questions about it. For example, maybe the stakeholder wanted you to add a chart showing profit per month. Then you would ask the stakeholder, how is profit calculated? Where is the cost data, etc. So again, this just ensures that there isn't any back and forth and you have a good structure starting out. There may be a few iterations in the future, but generally your first draft should cover the basic needs. Okay, here's the core of the tutorial. Let's create some dashboards. Now, before I do, I just want to show you the whole process of creating a dashboard on Excel. So this is essentially an infographic detailing the steps. Ideally, to summarize this, we are going to be creating pivot tables. From there, create pivot charts, and then add those pivot charts to our dashboard sheet. Finally, we will create slices or timelines. So let's recap. To create an interactive dashboard, you start with pivot tables. You then create pivot charts, you then move the charts to a dashboard sheet, and then you create your slices to filter the data. Now that we know what to do, let's go ahead and start developing our dashboard. Okay, so we are on step 4, which is creating pivot tables. So here we are on our sheet. So I am on the company X sales document, and my tab is called data at the bottom. And we are going to create our pivot tables because we do need pivot tables, because from our pivot tables, we are going to be creating pivot charts and then sending those charts to our dashboard. So let's start creating some pivot tables. So to start, you can click on any cell on your table. So I am clicking cell A2, and we are going to go to the Insert tab here. So click on the Insert tab here and click on Pivot Table. Now the Create Pivot Table window pops up, and Excel will ask you to select your table range, which as you can see, it's already selected for us, which you can see by the green dotted or dashed line. You can also have the option of using an external data source. And here's where you actually decide where you want to place your pivot table. Do you want to place it in a new sheet or on an existing sheet? If you do want to place it on an existing sheet, you would need to indicate where you would place it. Now, I like to place all my pivot tables on new sheets. And the main reason why is because if you ever need to add some data in, maybe if this data is from Jan to March 2022 and you want to add April 2022, then it will be easier just to have this sheet just representing your raw data, and you can add and change the raw data how you want. And then the other sheet can be all of your pivot data, which essentially is your transformed data from your raw or source data. So with that being said, let's select new sheet and click OK. And you can immediately see that a new sheet has been created called sheet 2. And now we have something called pivot table 1. And to the right, there should be a pane called pivot table fields. Now, the pivot table feature is perhaps the most technologically sophisticated component in Excel. With just a few mouse clicks, you can slice and dice your data in many different ways and produce just about any type of summary that you want. Essentially, we can create these rolled up or aggregated tables from our raw data and answer those questions from the investors. So I'm just going to zoom in here just so you can see better, but you obviously don't need to. So we can see on the right that we have this pivot table fields window or pane that appears. So if we see on the right, we know this pivot table fields pane has appeared, and this here are columns in our main data spreadsheet. How this works is that we can place these columns in specific positions here, and the pivot table will be outputted. So here's an example.
why don't we select city, and you can see if you click on it, you'll be able to drag it, and let's drop it on the field rows. Okay, so now we see that the different cities appear as a row, and maybe we want to see the sales related to each city. So let's select sales, and we are going to drop it by the sum value sign, or sigma values. Great. So what we see here is we see city on rows, and it's giving us the sales per city. And if we look at our pivot table fields pane, we can see we've added city to rows, and we've added sales to the sigma values box. And now Excel is telling us, well, it's taking the sum of sales. So whatever we add to this box, it will take the sum or count or average of, depending on what we want. So if I didn't want sum of sales, but I wanted the average, I would right-click this field, click on field settings, and here I can change how I want it summarized by. So if I wanted it by average and click OK, it now gives me the average sales per city. And then you can see our box changes from sum of sales to average of sales. So this essentially takes our value, which is a column that is a measurement quantity like sales, quantity, cost, etc. And it can sum it up, it can average it, it can give us a count, it can give us a max sales, some min sales, etc. based on what we put on our rows or even our columns. Let's change this back to sum of sales. So we are going to right click, field settings, and let's click sum again and click OK. Perfect. Now let's add something to columns. What if we want to see branch? So essentially I want to see city here, and I want to see branch here, and then the sales for each branch by city. So let's click on branch at the top, and let's drag it to columns. Now our pivot table changes. So what do we notice here? Well, we have our city. We now have our branches. Our branches are called A, B, and C in this data set. And it actually tells us by city and by branch how much sales. So we know that Yangon for branch A has made about 101,000 in sales. So for city Mandalay and branch B, we've also made very similar 101,000, and so on. We also get grand totals, which is quite nice because then we can see the total per city irregardless of your branch here. And then similar, we get the grand total here at a row level. So we can see the total sales per branch regardless of the city, which is quite useful. We can also decide if we want to filter our pivot table. So maybe I want to filter just to see a specific customer type. Let's click on customer type at the top, and let's bring it into filters. Now you'll notice that there is another row appearing, and here essentially we can filter the data based on customer type. So if we click on this drop down in B1, and let's select member and click out of it. Now what we can see is just for our customer type member, we can see the sales by city and by branch. And then if we want to select normal, now this will show the sales by city and branch for normal customer types. And then if we want to select everything, this will bring us back to our previous position. Okay, but we are not going to use filters here, so I am just going to click customer type over here and just drag it out. Perfect. You can also take a few minutes just to play around with this whole concept, but essentially, as you can see, the theory behind pivot tables is quite easy to use. That's why it was designed. It was designed to be very user-friendly, and essentially we're using pivot tables to summarize or aggregate our data based on the questions that the investors have asked us. So with that being said, let's go on and create our first pivot table. So I am looking at the mockup, and we are going to do a sales by date, and it's just going to be a simple bar chart. So let's start by maybe renaming our sheet 2. So double click on it, backspace, and let's call it sales by date. And I'm going to use the same pivot table, but let's just remove our branch from columns. So just click and drag it out. And let's remove city as well from rows, click and drag it out. And essentially for rows, I just want to show the date here. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's bring in date from the top and drag it and drop it to the bottom of rows. Perfect. So now we have Jan, Feb, March. We can also expand and contract to get the actual day, but I think we can just leave it with this here, Jan, Feb, and March. And this is our first pivot table. Quite simple. Let's create another pivot table because we want sales by city. So 2 ways you can do it. You can go back to the data tab, go to insert, go to pivot table. Our data range is fine. We're going to be creating a new worksheet and click OK. And now we have a new pivot table. And now we can start working on that. Or some people, what they do is they just make a copy of this tab. So sales by date, if you just right click, you say move or copy. You can just click on create a copy and click OK. And then it will just create an exact copy of this. So you can see sales by date 2. And then what you do is you can just remove all your fields and you start off with a new pivot table. So either one, up to you. I'm just going to right click and delete this, sales by date, and then just start with my new sheet, which is sheet 3. And let's call this sheet sales by city. I'm just going to zoom in again. Okay, and now exact same concept here. We want sales by city. So let's take city and drag it to rows. And let's take sales and drag it to values. Perfect. Now what we need, according to the mockup, is sales by branch. Why don't we create another pivot table? So let's right click any sheet. So you can do sales by city or sales by date. Move or copy. Create a copy and click OK. Let's change the sales by city to, and let's call it sales by branch. Make sure you click in your pivot table. If you have any other windows, you can just click out of it until you get the pivot table field pane. And let us do, instead of city, let's get rid of that. And let's do branch. So let's find branch here and drop it on rows. Perfect. So now we have our branch and our sales. Quick and easy. And last one we need to do is sales by payment type and date. So again, let's right click, go to move or copy. Go and click create a copy and click OK. Awesome. So now we have a sales by branch 2. Let's double click and rename that and call it sales by payment and date. Click on the pivot table. And now instead of branch, let's get rid of that. Let's do date. So let's click on date and bring it to rows. And let's find payment here and let's bring it to columns. So now we have for each month, we have our sales separated by the payment type. So for example, in Jan, we made 39,000 in cash, 36,000 in credit card, and then 34,000 in e-wallet. Okay, so we have created 4 pivot tables, quite simple ones. Obviously, you can make them how complicated you want, depending on how you want your pivot chart. And the next step would be pivot charts. We have our 4 pivot tables. Let's start creating some pivot charts. And to create pivot charts, it's actually quite easy. So let's start off with our sales by date. And according to our mockup, we want that as a normal bar chart. So click on your tab sales by date and then just click inside your pivot table. If you go to pivot table analyze, you can see an icon here for pivot chart. And if you click on it, it now creates our pivot chart. Okay, so this is our chart and we have a bar chart, which is what we wanted. We have the months, Jan, Feb, March, and we have the sales. So let's do some formatting. Let's maybe change the color of the bars. Let's add some axis titles. Let's just clean it up a bit. So if you click on your chart, you can go to design and here you can change the colors if you want. So I'm just changing the colors to this one here, or you can do whatever color you want. You can even leave it if you do like the blue. And here you can change the design if you do want or prefer a better design. Generally, I always use this one here just because I like the way it looks, but please go ahead and do whatever you want. There are a few things I want to change. Like I said, I want to add some axis titles. We want to rename this title and I want to actually move these labels. So let's do that first. So let's click on the labels. So this just represents the actual amount. And let's right click on a label and go to format data labels. And here's where you can decide how you want your labels to look, if you want to rotate the text, if you want to change the label position. So here, make sure you're on the Format Data Labels pane. If you go to Label Options and click on this last bar chart icon, go right to the bottom, and let's do outside end. Perfect. Okay, if we click our chart again, and let's go to Add Chart Element. So this is where you can add things like axis titles. You can decide the position of your chart title if you want it above, if you don't want it, if you want it centered overlay. You can choose if you want grid lines, legends, etc. So what I want to do is add an axis title and click on primary horizontal. That should give us x-axis. Perfect. So let's double click this and let's call it date and in brackets month, like that. You can click our chart again and let's add a vertical one. So go to Add Chart Element, Axis Title, and go primary vertical. Okay, and let's call it sales. Perfect. Let's click on this chart title, double click on it, backspace, and let's just call it sales by month. Okay, I'm happy with how this looks. If you want to change the colors, you can do so here on your design tab, or you can click on the actual bar, right click, and click Format Data Series. And if you go to this full bucket and click on full, and if you go to solid fill, you'll be able to change the colors. So I'm not going to change the formatting a lot. So my best advice when it comes to formatting charts is just play around, see what fits, see what looks nice to you, and that's how you learn. But in general, I think the quickest way is to start with a default format over here and then customize it how you want. Okay, so we've done the first one, which is sales by date. Now that we're done with our chart, all we need to do is repeat this across all our pivot tables. So let's move on to the next one, which is sales by city. Okay, so I'm on my sales by city pivot table. And again, we're going to click inside our pivot table, go to Pivot Table Analyze, and click on Pivot Chart. And now, on our Sales by Date tab, we've already set our formatting, and we can do a shortcut to apply a similar formatting on our Sales by Date to our Sales by City. So what you do is you go to your chart that you have done the formatting on, you click on the chart and you right click and say copy or Command or Control C. Go to our Sales by City, select this chart and then right click and you can say paste. Okay, now you notice we have very similar formatting, but it's now sales by city, which is great. We don't need to waste any more time. The only thing I want to do is actually move this to a horizontal bar chart, just to have a different option for our dashboard. So if we click on the chart and click on design, you can see we have an option to change chart type. So click on change chart type, go to column, and move down to 2D bar. Now what we can do is maybe just rotate these labels because they look a bit off. So if you click on date month and right click and say format axis title, you should have this pane here opening. If we go to text options and click on this last icon, which looks like an A surrounded by a box, we can change our text direction. If you click on text direction, let's go to rotate all text 270 degrees. Perfect. And let's do the same for sales. So if we click on sales and then click here and let's do horizontal. Okay, that looks way better. And the final thing we need to do is just change the title. So let's call this sales by city. And that's it. Let's go ahead to sales by branch now. And let's create our pie chart. So click on your pivot table, go to Pivot Table Analyze, click on Pivot Chart. Okay, and now we want to apply formatting. So let's go to Sales by Date. Let's right click Sales by Date chart and copy. Let's go back to Sales by Branch. Let's click on the Sales by Branch chart. Let's click on the sales, right click, select paste. Perfect. And let's change this to a pie chart. So make sure your chart is still clicked. Go to design, change chart type, click on pie. And you can decide what pie chart you want. I like the donut ones. Great. We do need to change the colors here, so why don't we go ahead and do that. So what I do here, I go to design and let's just select that one. So the second one, perfect. And now I want to move our labels outside. So let's right click on our labels and say format data labels. And for label options, click on the last icon and let's just show percentage as well, because I think that's also important, and category name. And then for separator, let's do a new line. Okay, so that looks a bit better. Now I'm just going to move this out here just so we can see it. So you just click on the label and drag it. Okay, perfect. Let's change this to sales by branch. And the one thing I want to do is I've been using green, so I just want to make one segment green. So if you click on a chart, go to change colors. Okay, and I'm using this color palette here, so I'm just going to click on that just to maintain the same palette throughout my pie chart. And I also made a typo here, so I'm just going to change that to sales by branch. The last one we need to do is sales by payment type and date. So let's go to our sales by payment type and date tab. Let's click on our pivot chart. And according to the mockup, I want a stacked bar chart. So go to pivot table analyze and then click pivot chart. And now let's change this to a stacked bar chart. So go to design, change chart type, column, and I think it's a second one here with 2D column called stacked bar chart. Great. Again, let's keep the same formatting. So go to sales by date, click on the chart, right click, click on copy, go to sales by payment and date, click on your chart, right click and paste. Perfect. Okay, let's change the colors here again. So I'm going to change colors and I'm just changing my design to match my same design that I've been using. This looks great. I think my labels should definitely be rotated. So let's click on our labels, right click, format data labels, go to text options, this last icon, and let's change the text direction to rotate all text 270. And let's do that for all our data labels. So click on that and change the text direction to rotate all to 270. And then this one as well, click on it, text direction, rotate all to 270. Let's call the sales by payment type and date. And now why don't we move our labels to just have it inside the bars, just because it's actually clashing with our title. So if you click on the label, click on label options, click on this last icon, and let's move it to inside end. And you can do that for all the labels. I'm just moving all of them to inside end, just so it doesn't clash with our title. Okay, so now that we've created all our charts, they're all looking great, we can create our dashboard. So we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our dashboard. Now, you might have an empty sheet. If you don't, just click on this plus sign here at the bottom and you'll create an empty sheet. And let's just rename this to dashboard. So let's click on this corner button here and let's just fill it with white. So click on the full bucket and click on white. All right, so what we're going to do now is move all our pivot charts to the sheet. So let's start off with sales by city. Click on the chart, right click, and select move chart. And now Excel will move our chart. So you can either move it to a separate sheet or you can move it as an object in another worksheet, which is what we're going to do. So we are going to select object in and we are going to select our dashboard sheet and click OK. And then you'll see our sales by city pops up and you can just move it wherever you want for now. Let's do the same for sales by date. So go to our sales by date tab, click on the chart, right click, move chart, and we're saying object in dashboard and click OK. Perfect. Let's do sales by branch. Click on sales by branch, click on our chart, right click, move chart. Okay, and object in dashboard and click OK. Then the last one, which is sales by payment and date. Click on the chart. You can see it actually didn't move to a stacked bar, but that's fine. So let's just click on design, change chart type, column, and stack bar. There we go. So let's right click the chart, move chart, and object in, and we are going to say dashboard and click OK. Okay, and let's just move this down. All right, perfect. So we have all our charts here, and now in the next step, we are going to just lay it out a bit better and set up our slices. Okay, so let's just move the charts how we want them. So this is fine as is, but what I'm going to do is maybe just make some a bit bigger. I actually do want to make some space for our slices as well. So this is what I have so far. I like to leave the space here just for the slices and filters. But everything else looks pretty standard, which is great. Dashboard is set up, and now let's bring in our slices and our filters. I'm just going to zoom in here. So if you click on any chart, I'm clicking on sales by month. Go to pivot chart analyze, and let's add in our filters. So let's do a slicer first. Okay, now slices are good with dimensions, which are things that you can't measure. So for example, payment type, customer type, branch. You can't perform mathematical operations on them. You can't measure them. Slices work well. So if we select branch and click OK, we have the slicer coming in. And if we select A, we can see that this sales by month will filter by A. If we click this clear, it removes the filter. Now, if we click sales by month again, go to pivot chart analyze and insert slicer. And let's select a measurable field, such as sales, and click OK. What the slicers do when it's a measurable field is that each unique number becomes a filter. Just doesn't make sense, right? Nobody wants to filter the chart to just see any transaction having a sale amount of 10,17. That doesn't happen. And it's just going to give us a one transaction. Okay, so that's why we don't use measurable quantities as slices. And we can just delete that. So you can click on that in backspace or press delete. Branch is fine. And let's click on our sales by month chart and add some more slices. So pivot chart analyze, insert slicer. We don't add date as a slicer. Date has their own separate format called timelines, but anything else that's not measurable you can add. So according to our actual mock-up, they wanted to filter by city, branch, which we have, and then customer type. So those two, and click OK. So you can just resize them however you want, just to make them fit. You can always resize our whole dashboard, so don't worry. And just leave a space at the bottom for our timeline. And you can also change the design of your slicer. So if you click on the slicer, click on the slicer tab, and I'm just going to change the slicer colors to all green, just because my dashboard is green. So if you just click on each one, click on slicer, and you can change through here. Right, and if you click on the slicer, you'll notice that only one chart filters, which is not what we want. Okay, let's remove the filtering. And if you do want to multi-select, you select all of these check icons in your slicer. And now you can select more than one option. Great. Let's bring in our timeline. So click on sales by month again. Click on pivot chart analyze and click on insert timeline. Click on date and click OK. So now if you click on a month, so I think we just need to click on either Jan, Feb, March, because we only have data for Jan, Feb, and March. But if you click on it, then you'll see that our sales by month chart filters, and then to remove that filter, we click on that cross icon at the top right. If we click on the timeline and go to our timeline tab here, you can also change the format here, so I'm just changing it to green as well. Okay, so let's sort out the issue of just one chart filtering, because when I want to click on one, I want all my charts to filter. What we're going to do is we are going to click on the slicer, right click, and click on report connections. And this is where we connect our slicers to whatever charts we want. So we are going to connect our slicers to all of the charts on our dashboard and click OK. Now let's click on branch. Perfect. And now we can see that our dashboard is filtering And now we need to do the same for customer type, city, and date. So let's click on customer type, right click, report connections, and select all of our charts and click OK. Click on city, right click, report connections, select all our charts and click OK. Click on date, right click, report connections, select all of our charts and click OK. And now if we click on any option, we'll notice that the whole dashboard filters, which is what we want, and it's looking so good. Our final step would just be adding a title. So I generally add titles with text boxes, so go to insert and let's click on text box and let's just bring it here and let's call it sales dashboard for company X. Let's just centralize it vertically and horizontally. Let's just select everything, bold it. Perfect. And let's just select everything again and change the color to maybe a gray, like that. Great. If I click on the text box, go to shape format, shape outline, and click on no outline, it will remove the borders there. And then you can decide if you do want to remove the borders here or if you just want to line it up. But this is your dashboard. It now filters everything based on the options that the board suggested. We've created all the charts that the board or investors wants. And now what we can do is you can send this to anyone and they'll be able to work with this dashboard and interact with it as well.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you and really skilled up your data analytics skills and of course create some beautiful functional dashboards that are quick and easy on Excel. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It will mean a lot to me. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.